bartender, and this is Dish About the Dish, where the foods we eat tell the stories of our lives. Joining me today is a dear friend, author Asa Maria Bradley. Hello, Asa. Welcome to my show today.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
We're doing okay on this lovely Saturday afternoon, and it's spring. I'm so excited. It's spring.
I know. We're having this weird April weather, even though it's just March, where it's like wake up and like, oh, it's gonna be a beautiful spring day, and then like an hour later there's thunderclouds.
So yeah. Asa, I have to start off at the beginning with, what is your most memorable meal?
First of all, I was trying to think like, how many meals do I actually remember? And I think, do I have to just pick one? Like,
we'll start with one.
We'll start with one. Yeah. So one of my most memorable meals, just because it's funny, is when my husband was going to propose to me, he had made a reservation at a really fancy French restaurant called Papillon. That's in the Silicon Valley in San Jose, I think. The borders are a little bit weird in that area. And we went there and we had a reservation, and I, of course, didn't know who was going to propose. We went there and we had a reservation, and they told us we had to wait for 45 minutes. And I was like, well, like, we had a reservation, so no, we're not supposed to wait for 45 minutes. And the guy was really snooty with me. So I was like, well, fine. Like, we're not going to wait. Like, we're just going to go across the street and you can say goodbye to our money. So we went out across the street because at that time I was like on a rant, and my husband was like, no, we can wait. And I'm like, no, we're not waiting for 45 minutes and we have a reservation. So I made him go across the street to me, which was Black Angus. And he was like, I'm not going to propose at Black Angus. So he didn't propose, and instead he ended up proposing later, I think later in the week, and we were at home. And so when he told me the story that I'd actually missed out on getting the engagement ring earlier, I made him make another reservation, and then we went back, and he had to do it all over again. So I don't remember what we ate, but that was the memorable meal. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So is like having that public display of affection, that ultimate, will you marry me in public? That's something that you were into?
No, it wasn't so much that. It was more like, because then we did it very quietly, because neither one of us are very comfortable with attention. It was more that I wanted the memory of him like pushing the ring across the table in a restaurant, I guess, because we didn't like, I didn't want him on his knees or anything like that. He wouldn't have done that anyway, I don't think. We're both European. That's like too much emotion for us. But it was something about, I wanted I guess the event of the proposal to be something more special than us just hanging around at home. Because the proposal actually ended up being me talking about, my brother had just told me that he'd met the girl he was going to marry, and they had just met, and it actually ended up being the girl that he married. And my brother is 4 years younger than me, and so I came back into bed, and I was like, God, how do you even know at that age? Because he was like, I don't know, 23 or something at the time, and I was like, how do you even know at that age? How do you ever know that you're going to get married? I mean, that's like a lifetime commitment. And so my husband asked, well, do you think that you'll ever get married? I mean, like, he wasn't husband then. And I was like, I don't know, like, maybe. And then I said, what is this, a proposal? And he was like, well, it could be. Because at this point, the ring had like been in his pocket now for a few days.
Aww.
So I wanted to go back to the restaurant and redo it, so that it wasn't me going, what is this, a proposal? Like, but no, that's part of the story anyway, so it ends up being that.
Well, that makes it great, because then you had time to really think about it, and then it came to be. And so
yeah.
So what's one of your other than most memorable meals?
So another one is, look, I have always been a big fan of Indian food, but I've always eaten Indian food as in, go to an Indian restaurant and eat like a dinner kind of meal. And so I think a lot of times when we eat food from cultures that are not our own, it's usually the dinner dishes that we're familiar with. And I was at it was kind of a couple shower, like a bridal and groom shower with some friends that were getting married who happened to be Indian. And it was the first time that I ate like homemade Indian food because people brought things as a potluck. And I fell in love with idli, which is like sort of like a rice cake or rice shaped into a circular cake. And then you put like this amazing curry on top of it. And in this case, we were eating like vegetable curry on top of it, or probably chickpeas curry maybe. And I just like loved it. It was so good. And I had way too much of it. And my Indian friends were just amazed because I'm not a big fan of super spicy food. And this was super spicy, but something about that combination just made it fantastic. So that's another one that I really remember, where I kind of felt like I was being introduced to cuisine other than my own, for my own culture, in a way that I was like, oh, this is kind of the way that I would like to experience it even when I travel. But you can't really just go and knock on people's houses and ask them to cook for you. So that's one. And then one of the most memorable that I've ever done is, there's a restaurant in Cabo San Lucas down in Mexico that's called the Mona Lisa, and I think it's like it's been voted like one of the top 5 restaurants in the world. And they have made these terraced levels on like this cliff face, so that every terrace is just big enough for kind of one table. And so when you sit there, it's almost like you have your own private dining room, and it's outdoors. And that is probably like the most memorable location for a meal. And the food is also superb. It's really, really good. So those are probably my top 3s. I can think of more because I love food, but let's stop there.
So you are from Sweden.
Yep.
So is there something from like Swedish cuisine that you have brought with you, or is there something that you've missed from Sweden that's not here in the United States?
Yeah, not so much like particularly like a meal, because you can usually cook the meals that you're missing. And I have this fish pie that my husband has named it fish pie. It's really like kind of like a fish au gratin, which before keto was ever like a big thing. It turns out to be a really good keto dish, but it's just a bed of spinach with some broiled white fish, some chopped up eggs, and then you put this sauce on top of it that has egg whites, a little bit of mayo, and then fresh dill, and just put it in the oven, and it's like fantastic. So that's like my most kind of Swedish dish that I ever do. But I'm a big dessert fan, so I often miss like the Swedish desserts. Like we have a lot of things with fresh cream, and there's a marzipan tort that I really, really love. And luckily I have a Swedish friend who lives not too far from me, who's an amazing baker. Her name is Ingo, and she basically, whenever we have a gathering, she's not allowed to bring anything other than this tort. Let's call it princess tort. So I get some of my fill with that. But she has to buy the marzipan, unless she makes it herself sometimes. She has to buy the marzipan when she's at home in Sweden. Or I think maybe you can find it sometimes at the IKEA food store. So yeah. So whenever I go to your side of the state, I bring coolers because I fill up at the IKEA food store of like all the things that I can't get. And I just recently ordered some, we have this spread that you put on sandwiches that's like smoked cod roe. So we call it caviar, but it's not fancy caviar. Like if you've ever been to an IKEA food store, it's the Kalles caviar that's in the refrigerator. It comes in a tube. And I ordered some from Amazon, and it ended up being shipped from Denmark or somewhere, but it was free shipping because it was Amazon, right? And my husband was like, that is outrageously expensive. And I was like, yeah, but if you factor in the cost of gas to Seattle, you know, it's actually about the same. But then I also told my brother about how much I paid for it, and he lives in Sweden. He was like, are you crazy? Like if you pay me half that, I'll ship it to you. So maybe I have a new supplier now, but yeah.
Okay, so you brought up IKEA. How the IKEA, I guess you'd call it food commerce area, how Swedish is it, or is it Americanized Swedish?
So if you go to an IKEA in Sweden, it will have the cafeteria, but it will not have the food store.
Mhm.
So because you can just go to your local grocery store and get the food. But it is very Scandinavian. It's all like what we would get in a grocery store at home. I mean, we get other things too, but it's some of the, like, I don't know, some of the most like kind of like favorite dishes. And I don't know if this ever like hit the news other than the Swedish news or expat Swedes, but IKEA for a while decided that they weren't going to carry the Marabou chocolates, and they were going to like make their own IKEA chocolate and put that in the food stores. And there was like a riot across the world among all the few Swedish expats because it wasn't as good, and so they had to put it back in the stores with a pure, like the proper Marabou chocolate. But the cafeteria serves just about the same stuff that you would see in the Swedish store.
That's good to know. Because I would not have put that together, because to me it seems like it's very Americanized, but if it's pretty true, that's awesome.
Yeah, the hot dog stand, I'm not sure, because when I lived in Sweden, we didn't really have like the hot dog stand and the cinnamon buns kind of thing. So I don't know if they have that now in IKEA. I think they maybe do, but I think that is probably more Americanized than what you would see in Sweden. But the cafeteria is pretty true.
So now, okay, so you write Vikings. Vikings were like the first couple of books that you came out. What is a Viking diet, like myth or truth about what they would have eaten? Or what are some of the most outlandish stories you've heard about Vikings and like their grog and the raw fish or whatever?
Well, I think the most famous thing is like the Viking mead, right? The honey wine, and that seems pretty authentic to what like Swedes were eating back then. And then I haven't done like a ton of research on the Viking diet, but just in terms of I think it was where they lived. Like I don't know that they had very much cattle. And we still don't eat very much beef in Sweden because I think the landscape is not really set up to where it supports a lot of beef production. It's a lot of poultry and a lot of pork. So raising pigs has been something that has been done in Sweden for like ages. And then if you lived on the coast, it was a lot of fish. And Sweden is so long and narrow that fish was kind of part of everybody's diet. So and then berries and herbs were like what they used for spices, I guess. So yeah, it's pretty bland diet of fish and meat. And I don't actually know, like what they took with them on the ships were like a lot of like salted stuff, and then they fished while they were on the ocean as well. But they would have like barrels of salted preserved fish and meat, and then a ton of the mead, which I think one of the big things, other than just alcohol, is something that just about every ancient culture somehow figured out, was that the mead is also like a drink that doesn't go bad. So if you take it with you on your raids, then because you can't drink the salt water, then you have a supply of something to drink. So basically they were rowing across the oceans completely drunk most of the time. But yeah,
I think that's the only way you could get people to row across the ocean sometime is it's not like let's row, especially now. Okay, so your latest book is A Wolf's Hunger.
Yep.
Tell us about A Wolf's Hunger and why you shifted from Vikings to werewolves.
So I've always liked shifter books, and so I wanted to write a shifter series. That's like something that's been on my to-do list, and I still am really very much enamored with like the Norse mythology. So in Norse mythology, Odin has two wolves, and in Norse mythology also there's a wolf that guards the entrance to the underworld. And so there's like lots of wolf, kind of parts of the mythology. So I decided to see if I could like put the two together, like if I can still stay in the Norse mythology. So I'm actually, almost all my books are kind of in the same world, but they're geographically separated, so the characters don't really know each other. And I didn't necessarily mean for it to be that way, but technically they could all be at the same dinner table if they wanted to. So I decided to do a series where, so my Vikings series, the Vikings like died a long time ago and has been spending all this time in Valhalla, and now they've come back to Earth to save humanity, so they were sent back by Odin and Freya. And well, this book is, it's not really modern people because they've been werewolves for a long time, but they've lived for like a few hundred years, as opposed to the Vikings that were like alive thousands of years ago. So they're a little bit more modern in their attitudes, maybe. So the Norse Billionaire Shifter series is basically wolves that are connected to Norse mythology and Odin, and there's a lot of witches in them, because they meet up with different witches. Almost every couple is like a witch and a wolf shifter, and unfortunately they're not fighting Loki as much as my Vikings did, but they are fighting like dark magic, which may or may not come from Loki. We'll find out later in the series. So it's kind of not necessarily a spin-off or a continuation, but almost like a series adjacent to the Viking series. And I'm enjoying it because I like writing the shifter stuff and figuring out like the physics of what happens to the mass when you shift from human to wolf, and all of that stuff. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And it's also my first indie, well, it's not my first indie series because I have a couple of other indie books out, but it's the first time that I'm really planning a whole series in the indie space in terms of who's going to be the character in each one, because my other indie series, The Power of Lightning, is an urban fantasy series, and it's the same characters, the same main characters in every book. So this is my first paranormal romance indie series, so it's fun.
You took that leap. You took that leap to indie. It's not such a bad leap.
No, and I did. I mean, I still consider myself hybrid, even though I'm not currently under a traditional contract. But even when I was writing the other books that were indie and writing traditionally at the same time, I mean, I think there's good things about both parts of being either traditional or indie, but it's hard to, I would consider myself a mid-list author, and as a mid-list author, it's hard to give up the indie money and the indie control, I think. So yeah, so I'm very much enjoying the indie space.
That's great. And so so A Wolf's Hunger is out now, and I saw you have another one coming out soon, which is A Wolf's Obsession. And that comes out in May. That comes out in June. All my months are running together. So Wolf's Obsession in June. Check out both of them, because I'm sure it's up on pre-order soon, if not already, right? It is up on pre-order already, yeah. And if you read the first book already, then the second book is Bolt's story. So if you like Bolt's character in the first book, you're gonna love his story. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I love hearing all about things we've never talked about before. I know. And I was almost hoping that, well, for those of you that don't know, Anna and I are both members of the Greater Seattle RWA chapter, or we were. That's how we know each other. And we used to see each other once a year for the Emerald City Writers Conference. And last year it was, of course, online, and it's going to be online this year as well. So, I mean, we'll see each other, but it won't be quite the same. So, yeah. One day we'll see each other in person again. We're 400 miles apart or so. 300 maybe. I should know how far it is from me to Seattle. I don't think it's 400. Thank you again, Asa, for joining us today. And for some reason, I'm getting like this little delightful thrill knowing that I can get pretty decent Swedish cuisine at the IKEA. It just cracks me up. All of Asa's contact information is down in the description below. If you had fun with us today, give us a like, maybe subscribe, because we would love to see you again. So until next time, y'all.